ध्यायेत् शारदचन्द्रसुन्दरमुखम् ताम्रारविन्देक्षणम् भक्ताभीष्टवराभयप्रदकरम् कौपीनमत्रोज्ज्वलम् स्वात्मानन्दरसानुभूतिविवशम् सर्वानवद्यङ्गकम् श्रीमन्तं श्रीरमणीश्वरं गुरुवरं योगासनाध्यासितं ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणीश्वरं ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणीश्वरं ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणीश्वरम् हृदयकुहरमध्ये केवलं ब्रह्ममात्रम् यहमहमिति साक्षादात्मरूपेण भाति हृदि विषमनसा स्वं चिन्वतामच्युताव पवनचलनरोधा आत्मनिष्ठो भवत्वम्। Namo Ramana. We will commence this week's Friday's Atma Vichara by listening to Bhagavan's Upadesham. We have been reading from the book Ramana Answers Self-Enquiry 1900 to 1950, a compilation of all the answers given by Bhagavan on the subject of Atma Vichara, which has been compiled by our founder, President Sri A.R. Natarajanji. After reading the question and answers from the book, and we will contemplate on the answer given by Bhagavan, following which we will have a 20 minutes Atma Vichara session, and then we will be having a talk from our President Sharda Akka on the subject of Atma Vichara from the Ramana Gita. And then we conclude with prayers to Bhagavan. In the series of questions that we have been looking from 1936 to 1950, today we have the question related to mind. The question number 13. The devotee asks, how to get rid of the mind? The question is, how to get rid of the mind? Bhagavan says, is it the mind that wants to kill itself? The mind cannot kill itself. So, your business is to find the real nature of the mind. Then you will know that there is no mind. When the self is sought, the mind is nowhere. Abiding in the self, one need not worry about the mind. I repeat Bhagavan's answer. Is it the mind that wants to kill itself? The mind cannot kill itself. So your business is to find the real nature of the mind. Then you will know that there is no mind. When the self is sought, mind is nowhere. Abiding in the self, one need not worry about the mind. The whole sadhana that we get into is mainly because of the trouble that we face with this mind in the waking state. So, I was recently watching one video from Sri Brahmananda Saraswati of Chaitanya Rama Ashram, wherein he has taken up this Bhagavan's answer question about Manonasha and Manolaya. Nashtamanaso, not that verse of Upadeshasaram, the verse where Bhagavan talks about when the mind is laya, it is going to come back, but the mind that is destroyed is not going to be appearing again. And he explains that in that he talks about the clarity that we need to have about Manolaya, Manonasha, and about the three words Laya, Nasha, and the third word being Bhada. The Bhada which is the trouble. So the spiritual journey of all of us starts because of the trouble that we face with this mind. Whenever the mind wakes up, whether it is in the waking or it is in the dream, that's when we find that it is bound to give some sort of a trouble. We feel fear, some discomfort, even in the dream, because of the presence of this mind. And this mind is nothing but a stream of thoughts. So the sadhana is, as we see, is to not have this disturbance from the mind. Essentially, that is the whole purpose of the sadhana. And many a times we look at that when the mind is subdued, then the problem is not seen. And in the sadhana, we may use nama japa or some practices like the pranayama or the yoga. Some of these practices which temporarily makes the mind become silent for a few hours or a few minutes. And even in the dhyana that we do, the mind also becomes quietened. But it is like laya. It is something that which subdues for a few minutes, but it appears back. In the classic example is that when we go to the sleep, we see that there is no mind, but it is not that the mind has been completely destroyed. However, in sleep, because there is no trouble of the mind, there is a lot of liking to it, because it's free, it's the state of being free from the mind. But it's not the same that once we wake up, come into the transit into the state of dream or the waking from sleep, we see that the mind is not being destroyed, comes back with its rigor, and we again get the trouble that we were facing. So the bhada is the most important thing, says the Swamiji there. And in saying so, he says that all sadhanas that we may do to make the mind become laya it only makes the chitta more shuddhi, or the vasanas become probably less, a little bit. Chitta shuddhi may happen, but the destruction of the mind happens only by completely eliminating the bada, the disturbance the mind creates to oneself. And Bhagavan is here very clearly telling that so long as we are using the mind and getting into any sadhana, and we are only doing laya because the mind cannot kill itself. It is only with the mind that we think, oh, I should do meditation. And that is also in the mind. And it is the mind itself which decides to sit down and do the ekagrata, do the sadhana of the japa, or attend to the prana and subdue itself. But it cannot kill itself, says Bhagavan here very beautifully. So Bhagavan is asking us to go one step further. And this used to be the verse in Upadesha Saram that I used to always come back to. What is that Bhagavan says that we should do to achieve the Mano Nasha? So that verse I used to always listen again and again. Here Bhagavan says we have to take one step further, which is to find the real nature of the mind. When we find the real nature of the mind, or in Atma Vichara, Bhagavan says, to whom is this thought? Who am I? And therefore we go to the one to whom this mind and the thoughts are appearing as objects. And when we go to that truth, to whom this mind and everything is appearing as an object, obviously mind is not for that person. Mind is only an object now for that entity or that self that Bhagavan is talking about. So therefore, that self is here and now free of the mind. It is not having the bada of the mind. And by recognizing that the self, to whom this mind, these thoughts are all appearing to as objects, it is here and now free of the mind. And free in the sense, it doesn't have that mind itself, and therefore there is no disturbance or all the disturbance that we saw has never affected that self. We can look at it that way also. The bada has not happened to it. It is still fullness of consciousness. It is still the fullness of existence, and it is still the fullness of peace. And therefore all these different thoughts of emotions, of hate, of jealousy, of like and dislikes, of wants and don't wants, of frustrations, or any sort of all the entire commotion, the bada that the mind makes appear has not even touched this self. And therefore when we inquire that and when we find that, then alone it becomes very, very clear that Bhagavan says the self is free of it and the mind is nowhere. So I, being the self, really there is no mind for me, becomes very, very clear. Or even if the mind is running, it doesn't touch me. It doesn't create the hurt. This becomes clear. And Bhagavan therefore says to go back and repeatedly abide in that state of ours. Get acquainted to our real nature. And therefore get ourselves, gain the freedom from the mind and its afflictions. Then Bhagavan says, abiding in the self, one need not worry about the mind. So if we are abiding in our natural state, where the mind is completely an object, and we need not worry about even looking at the mind as an object. If I am not worried about the mind and if I am free of the mind, why should I even attend to that mind? So I can steadily abide in my own state. If the attention goes to the mind, I simply have to ask to whom is this and get back to my own state of being, my own state of the self to whom this whole thing appears. And by repeatedly abiding in my own state, I can experience that freedom which is the primary reason that we started the sadhana. The sadhana was to get rid of the bada, the pain, and Bhagavan is revealing in this beautiful way that our natural state here and now is free of it. It is only that when I take myself to be an individual and then attend to all the thoughts that keep appearing, and I itself being the primary thought or the individual, it's the primary thought, and to that many other thoughts are appearing, and therefore this whole phenomenon is falsely attributing my reality to a thoughts. But when I recognize that I am the awareness, I am not a thought, and when I recognize myself to be the awareness and remain in my state, then it becomes very, very clear that I have been forever free of the mind and its afflictions. And that is the way to gain the peace. And that is the manonasha. Bhagavan usually gives the example that after the destruction of the mind, it is like the moon in the broad daylight. In that pure consciousness, which is fully clear about its nature, like the sun completely shining, how does it matter if the thoughts rise or doesn't rise? Because it knows that it is not going to be afflicted by it. Like that, in that broad light, the moon being there in the sky has no effect. And that is what Bhagavan is trying to say here. Abiding in the self, abiding in that bright consciousness, the fullness of consciousness, one need not worry about the mind. So the real destruction of the mind is not that the mind becomes completely absent in any way. It is just that the bhada the mind creates is no more. And that is the answer given here by Bhagavan. The immense grace of Bhagavan with which alone we have come to this most direct path, wherein every thought Bhagavan makes it as an opportunity for us to turn and see our thought-free nature here and now by inquiring to whom is this thought, who am I, and experiencing the real freedom of the thoughts, experiencing that self which has never been afflicted ever and which can never be touched ever by any thought or anything whatsoever. And by repeatedly abiding in that through the means of inquiry and thereby having the true bhakti, the para bhakti, where the self alone is, which alone is sought and abided. By that very thing, Bhagavan says that the mind can be killed. The immense grace of Bhagavan for the next 20 minutes, let us do Atma Vichara. Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya. Namo Ramana. Over to Shardanka.
Namo Ramana. Prostrations to Ramana, shining as the self in all beings. By the immense grace of the self, manifest as Ramana, we have been meditating on his answers with regard to the questions on self-inquiry and also his answers to related doubts in the Ramana Gita. In this section of the satsang, we meditate on the question and answers in the Ramana Gita, and we are on the chapter of Mukhya Kartavya Nirupanam, the most important duty. And Bhagavan has told us categorically that the most important duty is only to abide in the self. Then Daivarata has asked him, what are the means to abide in the self? And Bhagavan said, Vishayebhyah paravritya vritti sarva prayatnataha vimarshe kevalam tishte dachale nirupadhike. That is the way. Vishayebhyah paravritya vrittihi. Turning all the thoughts away from objects through effort. Prayatnata vimarshe kevalam tishte. And abiding in the absolute consciousness. In that in which there is no duality. That is the method, says Bhagavan. And we also meditated upon how everything is an object for us. Everything is an object. Beginning with our body. Then what to say of everything related to the body? All are objects. So if one has to turn attention away from the object, one has to turn attention away from every experience. Not physical objects alone. Also, everything that is mental. One turns away from it through the questioning, for whom is this? Who am I? When I don't know who I am, where is the question of any experience for me? Where is the question of anything that I may like or I may dislike? Where is the question? So again and again, attention is turned away from objects through the question, who am I? Given to us by Bhagavan. Then, this way is simple. The way is not difficult. But there is a way, actually, if one turns away from all objects, even for a split second, what remains? Only the self remains. Then how is it that there is a need for practice and there is a time frame for the practice, that it takes us 1 day, 1 year, few years, many years? Why does this happen? Because of the strength of vasanas, because our habits are so strong that we are not able to hold on to the question, who am I? Again and again, the mind assumes knowledge. We assume knowledge about ourselves. Again and again, we think, I am this entity. We have to remind ourselves again and again that we are not this, through the question, who am I? And again, we become associated with this thought. And not only with this thought, so many thoughts which are connected to this thought also come. Along with this thought that I am so and so, many other thoughts come up. So one has to disentangle oneself from everything. Therefore, there is a need for repeated practice. And as an Aksharamanamale, Bhagavan says, Payya un veedu kaattinai Arunachala. So வீடு புக்கு பைய உன் வீடு காட்டினை வீடு விட்டு ஈர்த்து உன் வீடு காட்டினை how பைய gradually okay. So Bhagavan says gradually you Arunachala you revealed, but in elsewhere he says you have kept from me all knowledge of gradual attainment. But these verses are for our sake. They have come to Bhagavan for us. They are not his in that sense, because where is separation for him from Arunachala? So it happens gradually. Since it happens gradually, Daivarata is asking the next question. He asks Bhagavan, Yavat siddhir bhavendrinam yogasya munikunjara Tavantah niyamah tavantam niyamah kalam kim yat namupakurvati tavantam niyamah kalam kim yat namupakurvate yavat siddhir bhavendrinam yogasya munikunjara. O Munikunjara, O great one among sages, until the point when one is completely united with the self, until that yoga happens. So, till that point, Yavat Siddhir Bhave, until that is attained, until that oneness, that yoga is attained with the self, O Bhagavan, tavantam niyamah kalam kim yat naupakurvate. During that period, when one is still practicing, when the mind goes in and out of self-abidance, during that period, should the sadhaka, the practitioner of this path, follow all the rules of conduct or not? Is it required that he or she should follow all the rules of conduct? Because we may say, after all, self-abidance, Bhagavan has said, what is the mukhya kartavya? Self-abidance is mukhya kartavya. That is the most important duty. So why should I perform any other duty? Until self-abidance happens also, why should I perform any other duty, since self-abidance is the highest duty? This question may arise in the mind of any seeker. And this question arose in my mind also when, as a girl of about to be 17, you can say I was 17, yes, I was already 17, and I had gone to Vishwanatha Swami and he had blessed me with mantra japa, because I had a thought that I want to do mantra japa, but he had turned the mantra japa towards the source. He said, watch the rise and the subsidence of the mantra. Second thing which he told me is, it should be continuous. That will also come in this chapter later. But this is what Vishwanatha Swami told me. He said it should be continuous, but he specified, give all your spare time to meditation. And the Great One's blessing is such, when their words are there, it automatically comes true. Because with our effort, these things do not happen. But by the grace of the Supreme, it happens. So more or less, there was a lot of interest. There was very deep interest in pursuing the watching of the source of the mantra. And there was a lot of joy because he had newly connected me to the source consciousness. So when one turns to the source, there is lot of joy. There is bound to be lot of joy. So there was lot of joy as well in the practice, and there was eagerness. I was young, and when one is young, one has a lot of enthusiasm about whatever one is doing. As one grows older, the sense of salip, as Bhagavan says, no, the tiresomeness sets in. Okay, how much longer should I keep on doing this? These questions come, but not when one is young. When one is young, there is a lot of fervor. In fact, if we see the very young children, right, when they have to get up, stand up for the first time, how many times they would fall, but they will not give up. When they have to start walking, they may totter, they may fall, but they keep on putting in the effort. They do not tire. But for those who are older, the sense of tiresomeness sets in. Actually, when we got our new building, the Ramana Maharshi Heritage Campus, the first set of buildings to come up was the auditorium, which is on the first floor. There's the ground floor, a conference hall, and then the auditorium. And then we have the other office buildings in the office rooms in the third floor. Second floor so called, but almost like the third floor because the auditorium has a height of 2 floors. And many of our staff members like Ashwini, Revathi and others had just joined as sevaks. They were still students. They had just joined to do seva, Ramana Seva. We did not have a lift. And many of us would just climb up first thing in the morning and not want to climb down at all till the evening. But these young girls would run up and down any number of times. They would literally run up and down any number of times for the smallest of errands. That was the kind of energy. So there is that energy when one is young. So with all that, I could follow what Vishwanatha Swami was saying of trying to meditate all the time, do the japa all the time. And there was a lot of joy. But I was also a student. I had just joined the first year of degree, my BA course, and I was a student. Basically, I always like studies. I was not one who was disinterested in studies. Most of the subjects I would enjoy. And fortunately, I have always had very good teachers who have made it more enjoyable. So there was nothing wrong with studying for me. It was not that I disliked studies, therefore I wanted to drop it. No. But the joy of the mantra japa was high at that time. So I didn't feel like doing anything other than that. I wrote to Vishwanatha Swami asking him, why should I do anything else at all? Why should I study for my exams? Why should I study all these books? What is the meaning in all these books? What is the use of studying all this? Is not self-abidance alone of significance? That being the case, why study English grammar, or why study English literature, or why study economics and psychology, the science of the mind? Why study all this? This was a question which came to me, and Vishwanatha Swami promptly wrote back saying that I had told you only to give all your spare time to meditation, which one would realize is much more than what one could even probably fully focus on that. So he said only spare time, whereas whatever duties have been cast upon you by the natural course of events, performing them with full attention is primary tapasya. So Bhagavan never encouraged anyone to drop the niyamas. So here also Bhagavan is saying, prayatnamupakurvanti niyamayunjatam satam. The good people, the satam, they certainly engage themselves in the observance of all prescribed disciplines. They do not give up any of the prescribed rules or regulations. Then Bhagavan says, Siddhanam kritakrityanam galanti niyama swayam. For those who are the great siddhas, or those who are kritakrityas. Kritakritya is one whom Bhagavan describes in Upadesha Saram as krityamasti kim swastitim yatah. For one for whom all karmas, all the bondage of karmas have become loosened and fallen off. Such ones, galanti niyama swayam. When there is no need for any action whatsoever, then all rules also dissolve of their own accord. There is no choice. Why should I do this? Why should I not do this? Such a question is never asked. They just drop off. It is said in the Vedas, Urvarukamiva bandhanat. Like the cucumber fruit separates itself automatically when it is ripe from the plant. Like that, all actions fall off. Galanti niyama swayam, not by choice. So Bhagavan says we should not choose to drop any of the rules and regulations. Bhagavan himself followed every rule of the ashram. He would get up exactly at the time when the bell rang. He would always observe the timing. He would observe bodily cleanliness, absolute cleanliness. Shubhra Kaupina Vasanaya Namaha says Vishwanatha Swami. He always wore clean clothes, not dirty or tattered clothes. He had one Kaupina which, when it got torn repeatedly, he stitched it and then wore it. What was the need? He could have worn a torn Kaupina. What is there? I can wear a torn. I know some people, they will wear torn clothes. They will say, I'm only at home. So they don't think of the rules. But how important are rules? And I was saying once, see, if the planets don't observe their timings and the rules, what will happen? If they do not observe the paths which they have to move on, what will happen? If trains leave their path, what will happen? If flights leave their path, what will happen? There will be absolute chaos, isn't it? So rules are prescribed because they are required for society. And rules help one because that is the first degree of surrender. When we live as according to the prescribed rules, we have surrendered and we don't have to waste our time wondering, is this right or wrong? Should I do it? Should I not do it? Because if we start questioning the rules, where is the end to questioning anything? So Bhagavan does not prescribe that we should question anything other than the ego. The ego alone must be questioned and must be questioned all the time. When that is done, where is the time to make choices about other things? Where is the time or energy to put our mind to thinking whether this should be done or this should not be done? So the best thing is to fall in line with the observances, the niyamas. These niyamas are of various kinds. Those which have come down to us by the family tradition, those which are observed by people around us in the community in which we live. It could be at home, it could be at office. There will always be some rules and regulations, or it could be in the city. Say, if one is in India, there are certain traffic rules one has to observe. Whereas if one is in the United States, it is a different traffic rules that one has to observe. There is right hand driving and left hand side driving. So there are different rules. And there is that saying, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. Why? Because it leaves our energy free. For what? For following the Mukhya Kartavya. We don't have to waste our energy on anything other than the Mukhya Kartavya. I had a very wonderful lecturer in my degree again. She used to take what was called the moral science class. One of the lecturers who used to take moral science class for us. So in the moral science, ethics were discussed. And she said, ours was a girls' college, ladies' college. So she said, nowadays, girls, they worry a lot. This was, I'm talking about so many years ago, but even then she said, they worry a lot about compatibility with their husbands. Are we going to get along, not getting along, etc. But in our generation, we didn't worry about all that. For us, marriage was a given. Okay. Now, so far as it is fine. I mean, there are always exceptions to every rule. It has to work that way, but by and large. So she said, marriage was a given. But the more important thing which she said in that context is what I often remember. She said, because we took it to be given, we didn't spend any mental energy on worrying about it or trying to alter it. All our energies were available to do other things. Whatever else they had to do, all our energies were available. This Bhagavan says is true of all situations in life. அவரவர் பிராப்த பிரகாரம் அதற்கானவன் ஆங்காங்கிருந்து ஆட்டுவிப்பான். God is present everywhere, guiding our life situations. And there is no way it can be changed. ஆதரின் மௌனமாயிருக்கை நன்று. So when we submit ourselves to the rules and regulations, and primarily to the rule that Bhagavan is running this world, he is taking care of everything, then what are we supposed to do with all our mental energies? We need not worry about anything. We need not care about anything. The badha which Dilip was talking about, that pain, that anxiety, the confusion of the mind is no longer there because it is left to him. Then what happens? What is the mind to do? Such a mind which has then no work left to do, having followed the niyama of leaving things to him. Having followed that niyama, what will be left for the mind to do? No other work will be left other than abiding in the self, enjoying the self. So Bhagavan says, when the body is allowed to follow its niyamas, when the mind is allowed to follow the niyamas of the situation, the surroundings, and when the spirit follows the niyama of surrender to the Supreme, then one is left free to abide in the self. And when this happens spontaneously, at one point, all the niyamas will fall off. And one is in that glorious state. Bhagavan is in that glorious state. We have seen that in his life. Let us look at it in little more detail in our next sharing. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramana.
Thank you, Arka. Apara Chit Sukhavarirashi Yasyormitram Bhuvanam Samastam Guhahitam Tam Ramanam Gabhiram Chintavihinam Hridhi Chintayami Chintavihinam Hridhi Chintayami. Namo Ramana. Thank you all.
Namo Ramana. Thank you, Dilip.